I died thinking the man I loved had sacrificed everything for me. But when my soul drifted away, I saw him kissing another woman under cherry blossoms, laughing about how he stole my family's fortune and faked his death to escape me. When I opened my eyes again, I was 18, the year we were supposed to get engaged. This time I won't be his puppet. I'll tear off his mask, ruin his schemes, and crown the man who truly loved me as my partner. Daniel Cross, your fall begins with my rebirth. The first thing I felt was the air. It wasn't heavy with cigarette smoke and dust from empty filing cabinets like it had been in my final hours. Instead, it was crisp, tinged faintly with sandalwood, the scent I had grown up with. For a moment, I thought it was some cruel hallucination conjured by a dying brain. But then I blinked and saw the mahogany beams of my father's study, polished to a dark sheen, and the faint gleam of morning sunlight falling across the marble floor. My chest rose and fell too quickly. My palms were cold and damp. I looked down at myself, at smooth hands without scars, at a pale blue dress that clung neatly to my figure, at the faint shimmer of a gold bracelet I hadn't seen in years. Impossible. The last memory burned like acid in my mind. Standing on the rooftop with my father, his hand squeezing mine as creditors banged on the steel door. His voice was broken as he whispered, "Don't be afraid, Isabella." The next second the world tilted and we fell together into nothingness. But here he was now. My father sat across from me at his desk, younger and sharper, his black suit perfectly tailored, his face free from the weariness that betrayal had carved into it later. He regarded me with the calm gravity of a man used to commanding entire boardrooms. His eyes, so steady in this life, so hollow in the last, watched me intently. "Isabella," he said slowly, "your mother and I have decided. It's time you chose." My throat tightened. Chose. I knew these words. I had lived this very moment before. "Among the 4 boys we've sponsored," he continued. "They grew up with you. You know them best. And I already know where your heart lies. With Daniel." That name, Daniel Cross, landed like a blade to my chest. The boy we had pulled from poverty raced as if he were one of our own. The boy whose tuition, clothes, and luxuries were all stamped with my father's signature. The boy I had once thought was the very definition of true love. In my first life I had thrown everything into him. My pride. My loyalty. My family's fortune. I believed he was the kind of man who would remember kindness, who would stand by me when storms came. What a fool I had been. Daniel hadn't just betrayed me. He had orchestrated my destruction. He had faked his death in a staged car accident, driven my father into despair with deliberate financial ruin, and kissed another woman under the cherry blossoms while sneering at my corpse. "If Isabella hadn't forced me to marry her," he had said, "maybe I'd have spared her and her father." I remembered that moment vividly, the icy numbness of realizing the man I'd worshipped never loved me, never even respected me. To him I had been nothing more than a gilded ladder. My father leaned back slightly in his chair, watching me as though waiting for me to blush and stammer, the way I had the first time this conversation happened. But this time, I straightened, every muscle taut with clarity. "No, father," I said, my voice steady. "I won't marry Daniel." The words sliced through the study like broken glass. My father blinked. "What did you say?" I said no. I held his gaze though my nails bit into my palms. "Not him. Not ever." His brows drew together. "Isabella, haven't your heart and eyes always been fixed on him?" For a heartbeat, the image of my past self flashed before me. The silly, spoiled girl who had trailed after Daniel like a lovesick puppy, wearing her devotion on her sleeve for everyone to mock. I almost pitied her now. I let a humorless smile touch my lips. "So everyone thought." Father's eyes narrowed in warning. "Marriage isn't a game. Don't make reckless decisions because of a passing mood." "On the contrary," I said quietly, "I've never been more certain." For a long moment, silence stretched between us, heavy and tense. Then with a sharp exhale I rose to my feet. The silk of my dress whispered against the chair. "I won't let Daniel Cross marry into the Hart family," I declared, each word deliberate. "That's final." Before my father could answer, I turned on my heel and left the study. The hallway outside was flooded with golden morning light. And waiting there were the 4 boys who had defined my entire youth. Daniel Cross, Adrian Blake, Marcus Reed, Nathan Cole. They stood in a loose circle, but their presence filled the space like the 4 points of a compass. Daniel, tall, handsome, dark-eyed, radiated the smug composure of someone who believed the world was already his. In my first life, that arrogance had been carefully hidden behind gentleness. Now I could see the cracks already. Adrian stood apart, arms crossed, his expression carved from ice. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his gray eyes sharp, always watching, always calculating. To everyone else he seemed cold, even cruel. But I knew what lay beneath that mask now. The quiet, unwavering devotion of a man who would never ask for credit. Marcus, with his easy grin, leaned against the wall as if life were one long joke. His sandy hair fell into his eyes and he gave me the same cheeky look he always had, ready to tease, ready to laugh. He had always been the easiest to manipulate, and in my past life, Daniel had often used him as an unwitting pawn. And then Nathan, silent, reserved, adjusting his glasses as his dark eyes flicked between us. He rarely spoke, but he missed nothing. In boardrooms later in life he had become a strategist so sharp he terrified seasoned CEOs. Even as a student that brilliance was already there, simmering. "Isabella," Marcus said, his grin widening, "we heard Mr. Hart is making you choose today. So who's the lucky one?" Daniel's lips twitched upward. He didn't speak, he didn't need to. Everyone already knew what the answer was supposed to be. Nathan remained still, but his eyes glinted, watching my every movement like a chess master noting the first piece placed on the board. Adrian said nothing, his arms crossed, his posture stiff. His gaze flicked to me once, unreadable, then slid away. Marcus elbowed Daniel with a chuckle. "I mean, do we even have to ask? Isabella's hated Adrian the most and loved Daniel the most since forever." A low laugh rippled among them. In my old life, I would have flushed scarlet, eyes darting to Daniel with helpless adoration. But that Isabella was dead. This Isabella only smiled faintly. "You're wrong," I said evenly. The laughter stopped. Daniel's smirk faltered, his jaw tightening. "What do you mean?" I let my gaze sweep over them all, lingering on Adrian for a fraction longer. My heart throbbed painfully as I remembered his hunched shoulders at my graveside, his whispered plea, "Don't love him in your next life." I swallowed, forcing my voice to remain calm. "Father says there's no rush. We're still in college. Whatever happens, we'll always be family. That's what you're meant to be. Family." The word cut. Daniel stiffened, fury flashing in his eyes, though he quickly masked it with indifference. He had expected me to announce him proudly, to cement his place as the future Hart son-in-law. Instead, I had clipped his wings before he could even spread them. His lips pressed thin. "I've got something to take care of," he muttered. And without another glance, he turned and strode down the hall, his back stiff with suppressed anger. I didn't need to ask where he was going. Today was Chloe Gray's birthday. And just like last time, he would do everything in his power to make her shine like a princess. But this time, I would not play the fool. The echo of Daniel's footsteps faded down the hall, but the tension he left behind clung like smoke. For years I had hung on those footsteps, chasing after them like a fool. This time I stood still and let him go. The silence that followed was broken by Marcus' laugh. Well, that was dramatic. He didn't even look back. Nathan adjusted his glasses, his expression unreadable. Adrian said nothing at all, though I felt his gaze flicker toward me for the briefest moment before he turned away, as though my existence was an inconvenience. That look used to cut me to the bone. I used to think Adrian despised me for being spoiled, for being pampered, for flaunting affection toward Daniel so shamelessly. I never realized until it was too late that it wasn't disdain at all. It was something heavier, something he hid so carefully I had mistaken it for coldness. But now I knew. I forced a light laugh, masking the storm inside me. "Don't worry about Daniel. He's always had somewhere else to be." Marcus raised a brow. "And you're okay with that?" The old Isabella would have followed him halfway across the city. Maybe the old Isabella was an idiot. My voice was sweet, but the words were sharp. Marcus froze, caught off guard, before giving another laugh to cover his surprise. Adrian, standing off to the side with his arms folded, finally spoke, his tone low and cutting. "At least you realize it now." The corners of my lips curved upward. "Did you just agree with me, Adrian? I'll treasure this rare moment forever." His jaw tightened. "Don't twist my words." I stepped closer, closing the space between us deliberately. "In fact, I could use your help right now." He turned his head slightly, his gray eyes narrowing. With what? I plucked a grape from the crystal bowl on the side table and held it out to him. Peel this for me. For the first time in years I saw Adrian falter. His brows drew together and a flush of color touched the tips of his ears. Miss Hart, get someone else. I'm not your servant. But I only smiled, stepping closer, brushing the tip of his finger with mine as I set the grape in his hand. But yours tastes sweeter. A faint shiver ran through him. He covered it instantly with a cold snort, tossing the grape back into the bowl without peeling it. Don't joke with me, Isabella. I tilted my head, watching him carefully. The faint twitch of his lips, the way he avoided my eyes, the redness at his ears. So subtle, so easy to miss. But this time I caught it. So you really were hiding all along. I smiled softly. Adrian Blake, you'll peel them for me one day. Just wait. Marcus whistled low. Careful, Isabella. Adrian, peels grapes for you, the world might actually end. Nathan, silent until now, gave me one of his steady looks. You've changed. The words were quiet, but they pierced sharper than any accusation. I smiled faintly, masking the sting. Change is good, isn't it? Nathan didn't answer. But his eyes lingered on me longer than they used to, as though he had noticed the shadows under my calm expression, the weight in my gaze. By evening, the house felt strangely empty without Daniel's presence. He had always filled the air with his charm, his smile, his easy lies. For so long I'd mistaken that performance for warmth. This time I sat in my room with the air conditioning humming softly and scrolled through my phone. My contacts list stopped on one name. Bank manager, Hart Holdings. My thumb hovered, then pressed. Miss Hart, the voice greeted warmly. How can I help you today? Freeze all of Daniel Cross's cards, I said calmly. Effective immediately. There was a pause on the other end. Understood. The weight in my chest loosened. In my past life I had poured resources into Daniel endlessly. Funds, connections, access. Every luxury he draped on Chloe had been bought with my father's money, with my blind indulgence. This time he would learn what it meant to stand on his own. As I set the phone down, I thought of the look on his face when he discovered his cards no longer worked. The boy who had once sneered at me from beneath cherry blossoms would taste humiliation long before his rise could even begin. Later that night, as I lounged on the chaise by the window, I heard a knock at the door. Come in. The door creaked open and Adrian stepped inside. His expression was its usual stoic mask, but his presence filled the room. What is it? I asked lightly. He walked closer, stopping at a careful distance. Daniel left earlier. With Chloe. I raised a brow. And? Adrian's eyes were steady. Everyone's talking. About you. About him. You should be careful. I tilted my head, lips curving into a soft smile. Are you warning me, Adrian? He didn't flinch, didn't soften. Yes. For a moment, silence stretched between us. In my past life I would have snapped at him, angry that he always judged me, always seemed disappointed in me. But now I only felt a deep ache, because I knew why he kept his distance. You loved me, but you thought I'd never love anyone except Daniel. I leaned back against the chaise, my smile never wavering. Don't worry. I know exactly what I'm doing this time. For the first time his mask slipped, just a fraction. His eyes darkened, searching mine as though he wanted to believe me, but couldn't let himself hope. He turned sharply and left without another word. I watched the door close, my hand curling over my chest. My heart beat too fast, too heavy. Adrian Blake, in this life I'll prove it to you. You were the one I should have chosen all along. The next day arrived with a buzz that filled the university halls. Everywhere I walked, whispers followed me. Did you hear? Daniel's throwing Chloe Gray the biggest birthday party of the year. A yacht party. Can you imagine? Of course Isabella won't be there. Everyone knows she's been chasing him for years, but he only ever cared about Chloe. I almost feel bad for her. I walked past them, my heels clicking against the polished floor, my expression serene. In my past life those words would have shattered me. I would have run after Daniel, begged for his attention, fought Chloe for scraps of affection. And in the end I would have stood on that yacht humiliated, accused, slapped. This time I only smiled faintly. The whispers weren't daggers anymore. They were background noise. What none of them knew was that when Daniel arrived to his grand yacht tonight, the cards in his wallet would be useless plastic. That evening, as the sun dipped into the horizon and painted the city in shades of gold and crimson, I sat by my window and let the cool air wash over me. Somewhere across town, Chloe Gray was slipping into a designer gown, waiting for Daniel to crown her with stolen wealth. He thought he was building her into a princess. But what's a princess built on borrowed gold? I lifted a glass of wine, savoring the faint sweetness on my tongue. This was just the beginning. Daniel Cross had taken everything from me once. In this life I would take everything back. The cruise ship glittered with lights that spilled across the water like liquid fire. From a distance, it looked every inch the fairy tale kingdom Chloe Gray had always dreamed of. Guests streamed aboard, champagne glasses in hand, their laughter carrying over the waves. But the fairy tale had cracks. Daniel Cross stood at the bow, his jaw clenched, his phone pressed tightly to his ear. What do you mean the cards declined? Run it again. On the other end, the manager's voice was polite but firm. I'm sorry, Mr. Cross. The payment failed. We require settlement before the event can proceed. Daniel's face darkened. A dozen classmates lounged nearby, watching curiously. Chloe, draped in a pearl-pink gown, whispered sweetly, "It must be a mistake, Daniel. Try another card." One by one he tried them all. And one by one each was rejected. The whispers began. Didn't he say he was covering everything? Maybe he's not as rich as he claims. I thought he was Hart family's future son-in-law. Daniel's throat tightened. He barked at the manager, "I'll settle it later. Just keep the party going." But the man only shook his head. "Without payment, Mr. Cross, there is no party." Humiliation burned through him like acid. He stormed away, pulling out his phone. There was only one person who could have done this. Back at the Hart Villa, I lay sprawled across my chaise lounge, the cool hum of air conditioning swirling around me. A bowl of grapes rested on my lap. Adrian sat across from me, pretending to read, though I could feel the sharp weight of his gaze flicking toward me now and then. My phone buzzed. Daniel Cross calling. Adrian saw it too. His gray eyes darkened, his jaw flexing. I smiled faintly and answered on speaker. "Hello." His voice burst through, harsh and furious. "Isabella Hart, why the hell is my card frozen?" I plucked a grape leisurely, rolling it between my fingers before replying. "I asked the bank to do it." The silence that followed was delicious. Then came his growl. "All because I went to Chloe's birthday instead of your amusement park? You're unbelievable. You're a rich princess. You could go with anyone. Why does it have to be me?" I tilted my head toward Adrian, watching his brows knit in confusion, and let my smile widen. "Because the Hart family has supported you long enough. It's about time you earn your own living." Daniel sucked in a sharp breath on the other end. "You're insane." I ended the call. Adrian stared at me, his expression unreadable. "You really froze his accounts?" "Yes," I said simply. Something flickered in his eyes. Relief? Approval? He masked it quickly, muttering, "You'll make an enemy of him." I leaned forward, plucking another grape, and held it out to him. "Then you'd better peel these for me, Adrian. I'll need the strength to handle it." His ears flushed scarlet. "You're impossible." But his hand trembled slightly as he took the grape. Hours later, as the city lit up, I dragged Adrian out with me to Disney World. "Why are we here?" he muttered, his hands shoved in his pockets. "Because Daniel wouldn't bring me," I said lightly. "So you will." The fireworks erupted above us, brilliant streaks of color across the night sky. For once, the world felt alive and untarnished. I snapped a photo of Adrian scowling at me while wearing a pair of bunny ears I'd shoved onto his head. He looked murderous. I laughed, posting it instantly to my social feed. Caption: "When the ice flower wears bunny ears, cherry blossom rabbit face." The comments exploded within minutes. "Oh my god, Adrian Blake in bunny ears? He's actually cute when he's not glaring. They look perfect together." I scrolled, grinning. Adrian's phone buzzed, his friends tagging him relentlessly. He shot me a withering look. "Take it down." "No. Isabella." I switched my phone to Do Not Disturb. "Too late. The internet has decided you're adorable." His ears reddened again, though his voice stayed cold. "You're insufferable." But when I looked closely, I caught it, that flicker of warmth in his gaze, quickly hidden. Meanwhile, on the cruise, Daniel seethed. Chloe clung to his arm, her smile brittle as guests whispered behind her back. The staff treated him with icy politeness, offering no help at all. Finally, the manager returned, bowing slightly. "Mr. Cross, per Miss Hart's instructions, no special courtesy is to be given." Daniel's face drained of color. Across the deck, classmates murmured. So he was just pretending to be rich? Chloe looks desperate, acting like she's high class when everyone knows she's not. Guess Hart family money doesn't belong to him after all. The humiliation was complete. By the time I returned home that night, my phone buzzed with a message from the cruise company manager. "Miss Hart, per your orders, we collected payment immediately. Mr. Cross had nothing. The guests are gossiping already. We'll send over the footage shortly." I smiled, setting the phone aside. Good. Adrian was watching me from across the room, his expression caught between disapproval and reluctant admiration. I tugged lightly on his tie as I walked past him, leaning close enough for him to hear my whisper. "This is just the beginning." His breath hitched, and though he masked it quickly, I caught the truth in his eyes. He was afraid for me. And yet he couldn't look away. The morning sun spilled through the tall windows of Hart Villa, gilding the marble floors with light. I sipped my tea slowly, savoring the calm. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I felt a strange peace settle in my chest. That peace shattered when the heavy oak doors slammed open. Daniel Cross stormed in, his eyes bloodshot, his jaw swollen faintly from a bruise I hadn't noticed before. Behind him trailed the butler, looking horrified. "Miss Hart," he forced his way in. "It's fine," I said coolly, setting my cup down. Daniel stopped in front of me, fists clenched. His voice cracked with fury. "Are you done with this tantrum yet?" I tilted my head, studying him. "If you're sick, Daniel, go to a doctor. Don't bring it here." His body went rigid. The silence stretched, heavy with disbelief. In my past life, I would have leapt up, begging for forgiveness, apologizing until my voice broke. I would have cried and clung to him, terrified of losing him. But that girl was long dead. I crossed one leg over the other, my voice icy. "What are you doing here?" Daniel's eyes blazed. "You froze my cards. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Do you know how humiliating that was? Just because my father took me in." I cut him off with a sharp laugh. "Don't flatter yourself. Raising you wasn't even worth the effort. At least a dog is loyal. You're not even close." The words sliced through him. His entire frame trembled, rage turning his features ugly. "Isabella." "Butler," I said evenly without looking at Daniel. "Get him out of here. From now on, he's not allowed in this house again." "Yes, Miss Hart." The staff moved forward immediately. Daniel struggled, shouting, "You'll regret this. Don't think you can just." His voice was muffled as they dragged him toward the door. I watched, expression calm, until his figure disappeared. Only then did I exhale. That was just the beginning. For a week, I stopped taking Daniel's car to school. I stopped calling, stopped answering his messages. I didn't bring him breakfast. I didn't ask him to walk with me. And slowly, panic began to gnaw at him. By Thursday, he was waiting outside my classroom. "Isabella," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "why are you ignoring me?" I brushed past him as though he were invisible. His voice sharpened. "She's mad at me, that's all. But if she doesn't apologize and reflect, I won't forgive her." The crowd of classmates murmured. "Isabella's so pretty and crazy about him. Honestly, he could do worse." "Yeah, but compared to Chloe, she's not even close." Daniel smirked faintly. "Exactly. What's the use of devotion? To me, she's not worth even one strand of Chloe's hair." The words sliced sharp as knives. But I didn't flinch. I turned slowly, staring at him. His eyes were red, but then, astonishingly, he burst into tears, running down the hall like he was heartbroken. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Pathetic. He doesn't even like her and she still clings to him. That kind of girl is gross. I let their words slide over me like water. Halfway down the hall, I bumped into Marcus. "Isabella? What happened?" His easy smile faltered at the sight of my downcast face. I let tears well up, choking back a sob. I froze his card. I thought he'd come back to me, but he's even angrier now. I just wanted him to forgive me. Marcus frowned, his playful demeanor softening. "Isabella, you know Daniel will marry you in the end. Why let Chloe bother you? She's the one he loves most, but you're the one his future depends on." I sniffled, lowering my gaze. I know. That's why I want to make it up to her. I'll throw another birthday party, an even more luxurious one. Do you think Daniel would forgive me then? Marcus hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yeah. I think he would. I grabbed his hand desperately. Then help me. Please. Make sure Daniel comes that day. He patted his chest, grinning again. Don't worry, Isabella. I'll make it happen. I thanked him with a shaky smile before turning away, the corners of my lips curling faintly once my back was to him. At home I stood before my mirror in silence. My reflection stared back at me, the pampered heart princess, every inch the delicate girl I had once been. But my eyes were different now. To break him, he must first believe he is still flying. In my last life I gave Daniel everything. He soared on wings I built, and then he cut me down. This time I would let him climb higher. And when he least expected it, I would strip those wings from him and watch him fall. At the upcoming party I would do what I should have done years ago. I would announce to the world who I truly belonged to. And Daniel Cross, once the proud scholarship boy lifted by my family, would have no ties left to the hearts at all. The whispers spread quickly through school. Did you hear? Isabella's throwing Chloe another party. After freezing Daniel's cards? She must feel guilty. Wow, imagine being so obsessed with a guy you'd throw his girlfriend a party. I let them whisper. Every rumor was a stepping stone. When Chloe passed me in the hallway, her smile was dripping with condescension. Isabella, you're so generous. But you don't have to try so hard. Daniel already said he'll never leave me. I tilted my head, smiling sweetly. Then you'd better hold on tightly, Chloe. Sometimes things slip through your fingers before you know it. Her smile faltered. I walked away, my heels clicking against the floor. Behind me I could feel her glare burning into my back. The night before the party I sat on the balcony with Adrian. He leaned against the railing, arms crossed, the moonlight tracing the sharp lines of his face. You're up to something, he said finally. I smiled faintly. Of course I am. Isabella. His voice was low, heavy. This path you're walking, it won't be easy. I leaned back in my chair, swirling the wine in my glass. Neither was my last one. At least this time I'm not blind. His gaze lingered on me, searching as though he could see the shadows in my heart. But he said nothing more. And I thought for the first time I saw it, the faintest glimmer of fear in his eyes. Not for himself but for me. 3 days later, the Hart family yacht gleamed under the city lights, decorated with extravagance that put Chloe's pitiful party to shame. I descended the staircase in a shimmering gold mermaid gown, the diamonds at my ears glittering like starlight. Ryan, no, Adrian waited below. Our eyes met. Do I look beautiful? I asked softly. For a moment he stared, unguarded, before his mask slid back into place. You dressed like this just to get Daniel's attention. I laughed lightly. You still haven't answered. His jaw tightened. You look beautiful. I smiled, looping my arm through his. Then take me there. And as the car sped through the streets, I knew this was it. The night Daniel Cross would begin to fall. The Hart family yacht glittered under the moonlight, a palace afloat. The decks sparkled with chandeliers, silk-draped tables, and champagne pyramids that shimmered like crystal. Musicians tuned their violins in the corner while waiters moved gracefully through the growing crowd. It wasn't Chloe Gray's cheap imitation of grandeur this time. It was real wealth, real power, and it carried the Hart name. As Adrian escorted me aboard, his hand firm around mine, the crowd hushed. Whispers began instantly. Isn't this supposed to be Chloe's birthday? No, look at the decorations. This isn't her style at all. Wait, don't tell me Isabella Hart organized this? Their uncertainty was delicious. At the center of the deck, Chloe stood in a designer dress that glittered under the lights. She radiated triumph, basking in the attention of classmates who fawned over her. Daniel hovered at her side, his smile smug, his arm draped possessively around her. The moment they saw me, Chloe waved cheerfully, feigning innocence. Isabella, you're here. You didn't have to go to such trouble. Daniel's smile, however, twisted into a sneer. He stepped forward, his voice cutting. Didn't you come here to apologize to Chloe and me? What are you waiting for? Kneel and bow already. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Adrian's jaw tightened beside me, his fists clenching. But before he could move, I caught his wrist lightly and whispered, "Don't worry. I've got this." Daniel's smirk widened. "That's not enough. Bow 3 times. In front of everyone." The arrogance. The entitlement. The absolute belief that I was still his puppet. I stepped forward, my gown catching the light with every movement, and smiled. "Daniel Cross." He leaned in, eyes glittering. "Yes." I brushed past him, climbed the stage, and took the microphone. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice carrying clear and sharp. "Thank you for coming tonight. I have 2 important announcements to make." The murmurs surged. What does she mean she organized this? Wasn't this Daniel's event for Chloe? Wait, what's going on? I ignored them, smiling serenely. "First, allow me to introduce my fiancé." The crowd stilled. Daniel's face drained of color. "Isabella, don't you dare." I raised my hand, pointing past him. "Adrian Blake." Adrian froze, his gray eyes widening in shock. For the first time in years, his mask cracked. The deck erupted. "Fiancé. Did she just say fiancé? She's not with Daniel. Adrian and Isabella. That makes way more sense. Power and power." Daniel stumbled forward, rage distorting his handsome features. "Isabella, are you trying to humiliate me? Even if you force me, I'll never love you." I turned, my smile sharp as glass. "Then it's fortunate that I don't want your love." Gasps. Silence. Then louder whispers. "She doesn't want him? Wait, she's the heart heir. Why would she want Daniel anyway?" Daniel's fists trembled. "You're bluffing." I ignored him and lifted the mic again. "The second announcement is this. Daniel Cross was taken in by my family, raised and supported for years. But today the Hart family officially terminates all financial support and all ties with him. From this moment on, his life has nothing to do with us." The words dropped like stones into still water, sending ripples of chaos through the crowd. Daniel's face turned ashen. "What? He's not wealthy at all? So he was just living off the Harts?" I handed the mic back to the stunned host, stepped down gracefully, and walked past Daniel. He grabbed my wrist desperately, his eyes wild. "Don't regret this, Isabella. Even if you come crawling back in tears, I'll never take you again." I laughed softly, shaking him off. "As if I'd want you." And with that, I slid my hand into Adrian's and walked off the deck. The crowd parted like the sea. Whispers chased us, but none dared to stop us. The car ride back to the villa was thick with silence. Adrian's hand was still in mine, warm, steady, but he hadn't spoken since. When we finally pulled into the driveway, he parked and turned to me, his gray eyes unreadable. "Congratulations," he said flatly. "You really broke him tonight." His voice carried a bitterness that surprised me. I blinked at him. "You think I did this to hurt Daniel? Didn't you?" I stared, then let out a laugh that broke into something closer to a sob. "You really think I'd announce you as my fiancé just to use you against him?" Adrian's jaw tightened. He unbuckled his seatbelt and reached for the door handle. On instinct, I grabbed his wrist. "Adrian." Before he could pull away, I leaned across the console and kissed him. He froze. For one endless second he didn't move. Then his hand closed around my wrist, firm and unyielding, and he kissed me back, deep, fierce, consuming. When we finally pulled apart, my chest heaved. My lips trembled as I whispered, "It was never Daniel who saved me from the fire all those years ago. It was you. Wasn't it?" His gaze darkened, silent confirmation. Tears burned behind my eyes. All this time, I loved the wrong man. Adrian's grip on my wrist tightened. His voice was low, rough, trembling with restraint. "Isabella Hart, you're the one who seduced me. Don't forget that." And then he pulled me into another kiss, harder than the first, until the only thing I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. By the next morning, the story had spread across every corner of our social circle. The Hart heiress announced Adrian Blake as her fiancé on the yacht. Daniel was cut off completely. He's nothing without them. I always knew Isabella was smarter than she acted. I didn't need to say a word. The world spoke for me. Daniel Cross's carefully constructed illusion was crumbling. And this was only the beginning. The night after the yacht, I dreamed of fire. The crackle of flames. The choking smoke. The desperate, clutching heat. And a figure, broad-shouldered, gray-eyed, lifting me through the smoke, carrying me out, pressing me against the cool night air while my tears blurred everything. I had spent years thinking that figure was Daniel. I had built my devotion on that illusion. But it wasn't him. It had never been him. It was Adrian. When I woke, the morning light was already pouring through the windows. The villa was quiet except for the faint sound of the butler and maids going about their work. My body felt heavy, my heart heavier still. But there was no time to indulge in emotions. Because for the first time in my life I wasn't just the heart princess. I was the heir, and I had to prove I deserved it. 3 days later I sat at the long glass table in the Hart Corporation's boardroom. My father sat at the head, surrounded by directors in suits, their expressions ranging from skeptical to openly dismissive. "This subsidiary is bleeding money," one of them barked. "We need to cut our losses." "Sell it," another chimed in. "It's a dead weight." I studied the reports in front of me. Numbers swam across the pages. Red lines, deficits, debts. But I saw something they didn't: the potential hidden in the assets, the value in restructuring. My father's eyes slid to me. "Isabella. Your opinion?" The directors snickered softly. "With respect, Mr. Hart, isn't she a little too green for this?" Heat rushed to my face, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I think you're wrong," I said clearly. "This subsidiary doesn't need to be sold. It needs to be restructured. The capital stack is unbalanced, too much short-term debt, not enough equity. If we refinance the debt and bring in strategic partners, it can be profitable within 2 years." The room fell silent. One director scoffed. "And where do you expect to find such partners?" "Fairy tales." I met his gaze steadily. "Hart Corporation has connections in renewable energy. There are government subsidies for clean tech ventures. We can pivot the subsidiary into that sector. I've already drafted a proposal." I slid the folder across the table. The directors exchanged glances. My father's lips curved faintly, pride flickering in his eyes. For the first time, they looked at me not as a spoiled daughter, but as a woman who could hold her ground. That night, my room was buried in textbooks and financial reports. My eyes burned from the hours of reading, but I refused to stop. A knock came at the door. Before I could answer, it opened. Adrian stepped in, holding a steaming bowl of red bean soup. I blinked. "You?" He set it on my desk. "You've been at this all day. Eat." I smiled faintly, reaching for the bowl. "How did you know I was craving this?" He crossed his arms, his voice gruff. "I didn't. I bought too much." The housekeeper passing in the hall chuckled softly. "What a coincidence. Whatever Miss Isabella wants, Master Adrian always just happens to bring." Adrian's ears flushed red, but he scowled, pretending not to hear. I laughed softly and leaned back in my chair. "Adrian Blake, do you know how obvious you are?" He froze, his gray eyes darkening. "What are you talking about?" I rose, stepping close, tilting my head up at him. "In my past life I was too blind to see it. But this time I won't make the same mistake." For a long moment he didn't move. Then, almost reluctantly, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my face. His hand lingered a second too long. "Don't push me, Isabella," he muttered hoarsely. But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Meanwhile, word of Daniel's downfall was spreading like wildfire. Without Hart money, he couldn't keep up appearances. He was barred from elite parties. Luxury brands stopped offering him gifts. His so-called friends quietly distanced themselves. I saw him one afternoon outside a ballroom, arguing with security. "Let me in. The host is a friend of mine." "Sorry, sir. No entry without an invitation." His voice cracked with desperation. "Call him. Tell him Daniel Cross is here." I stepped forward, my heels clicking against the marble. Daniel turned, his face pale. "Isabella." I smiled sweetly. "Still pretending you belong here?" His jaw tightened. "Lee must have forgotten to send me the invitation. I'll call him now." He fumbled with his phone. The call rang and rang. No answer. His face flushed with humiliation. "Want me to try?" I offered gently. Before he could stop me, I dialed. Lee answered immediately. "Isabella. Come in, come in. I'll send someone to get you." I glanced at Daniel, his face stricken, and smiled faintly. "Actually, Lee, there's a man at the door. Daniel Cross. He says he's your best friend. Should I bring him in?" Pause. Then Lee's cold laugh. "Best friend? That beggar? Security should have thrown him out already. Don't let him near the entrance. I held the phone up so Daniel could hear every word. His face crumpled. Goodbye, Daniel, I whispered, turning away as the guard pushed him back into the rain. That night when I returned to the villa, Adrian was waiting. His posture was rigid, his eyes stormy. You're playing with fire, he said. I know. Then why? Because he destroyed me once, I snapped, my voice trembling. He destroyed my father, my family, my life. This time I won't let him. Silence. Then Adrian stepped forward and pulled me into his arms. I stiffened, then melted against him, the warmth of his chest anchoring me. His voice was low, steady. Our princess has been working hard. My throat tightened. I tilted my head up and pressed a kiss to his cheek. Now it doesn't feel hard at all. For the first time I saw him smile, barely, fleetingly, but real. But even as I basked in his warmth, I knew the game was only beginning. Daniel had been stripped of his wings, but he hadn't hit the ground yet. And when he did, I wanted to be there to see it. The rain had been falling for hours. Sheets of water turned the streets silver, and the neon lights of the city blurred in the downpour. Somewhere out there, Daniel Cross stumbled through it all, drenched and desperate, clinging to the last fragments of pride he still had. I heard about it first from whispers. He's broke. Did you see Chloe dump him on the group chat? I thought he was going to be the heart son-in-law. Turns out he was just a parasite. The whispers reached me everywhere I went. Hallways, social gatherings, even in passing glances. And though people tried to be discreet, I saw the way their eyes gleamed with schadenfreude. I didn't stop them. Let them talk. The real blow came when a video circulated across our school's private group chat. I was in the library, a finance book open in front of me, when my phone buzzed relentlessly. Curious, I opened it. Daniel and Chloe. The footage was grainy, but the voices were sharp. Chloe's shrill tone cut through the rain-drenched background. You're broke now. Do you think I want to suffer with you? If I'm going to date someone, it sure as hell won't be a poor loser like you. Daniel's voice cracked. Chloe, all this time was it just about money? Her laugh was cruel, mocking. What else did you think it was about? Your fake pride? Your temper? Please, Daniel. Grow up. The video ended with Daniel standing there, soaked, his face twisted with devastation as Chloe walked away. Around me, students snickered. Some whispered. Some openly laughed. I only smiled faintly and turned another page of my book. So, the girl he'd chosen over me had cast him aside without hesitation. In my past life I'd never lived to see this moment. But now it was mine to savor. The next days blurred into a grim parade of humiliation for him. He skipped classes. Rumors swirled about him taking small loans from classmates, begging for help, pawning off gifts he once flaunted. One night, word reached me through a friend. Daniel had been seen at a seedy gambling den downtown. Are you going to stop him? Adrian asked me quietly when he caught me listening. I sipped my tea. No. Why should I? He's only digging the grave he prepared for himself. Adrian's jaw tightened. You're ruthless. I met his gaze steadily. He deserves nothing less. And yet, as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't help but think of the irony. In my past life I had begged Daniel not to gamble with heart money. He ignored me and we lost everything. Now, without my family to cushion him, the casino would strip him bare. And I wanted to watch. The footage came to me a day later, delivered by a quiet associate I had stationed to keep watch. On the screen, Daniel sat at a table under dim lights, his hair messy, his eyes wild. Chips dwindled in front of him as he rolled the dice again and again, his voice hoarse. One more round. Just one more. Across from him the dealer smirked. Mr. Cross, you've lost everything. But with a face like yours, handsome, confident, you're worth quite a bit too. How about this? Lose one more round and you give us a little video. Take off your clothes. Smile for the camera. We'll pay you for it. Daniel's chair screeched back as he stood, rage flaring in his eyes. Go to hell. The dealer only chuckled. No need to get upset. You're free to leave, if you can pay what you owe. The camera lingered on Daniel's trembling hands, the sweat dripping down his temples. Then slowly he sat back down. His voice was a whisper, broken. One more round. The screen cut to black. I sat there in silence for a long moment, the faint hum of the projector filling the room. Then I leaned back, crossing my arms. This, I murmured, is exactly the ending he deserves. Within days the internet whispered of a new leak. Explicit footage of a disgraced young man, passed around in the dark corners of forums. Daniel's name wasn't mentioned directly, but the knowing looks, the half-smiles, the murmured jokes in the halls said everything. When I passed by, some classmates glanced at me nervously as if expecting me to rage or cry. But I only smiled serenely, my heels clicking against the polished floor. Let them wonder. 3 months later, as summer's heat gave way to autumn's chill, I drove out of the villa on my way to the bridal boutique. That was when a figure stumbled into the road. I slammed the brakes, my car screeching to a halt. When the rain cleared on the windshield, I saw him. Daniel Cross. His clothes hung in tatters. His body was covered in wounds, some fresh, some festering. His once handsome face was gaunt, his eyes hollow, his lips cracked. Insects crawled along his collar, and the stench hit me even from behind the glass. He lifted his head slowly, and when his gray, lifeless eyes met mine, a faint flicker of light returned. Isabella. His voice was barely audible. Have you really stopped wanting me? I opened the door, stepping out into the drizzle. My heels clicked against the wet pavement. I stood before him, my expression calm, detached. He gave a weak laugh, his body trembling. You used to treat me better than anyone. I was the one who didn't cherish it. I pushed you away. Last night. I dreamed you forced me to marry you. I dreamed I destroyed your parents. I dreamed I killed you. His voice cracked. Tears streaked with blood welled in his eyes. If that was real, then I guess this is what I deserve. I looked at him, at the wreckage of the boy I once loved, and felt nothing. You're right, I said coldly. This is what you deserve. His body collapsed to the ground, a broken marionette with its strings cut. I crouched slightly, meeting his dull gaze one last time. The Hart family took you in. We gave you everything. Even for the sake of the years we shared, you should never have tried to destroy me or my parents. I never forced you to marry me, Daniel. Not in the past, not now. I, Isabella Hart, have never begged you to be mine. The ending you face now is only the result of your own choices. He choked out a sob. His body shuddered violently, then stilled. Behind him, Chloe was nowhere to be seen. She had already sold herself to another wealthy heir, only to be beaten half to death by his wife. She was just another casualty of her own greed. Daniel had nothing left. Not love. Not pride. Not even dignity. And I had no pity to give. I stood, brushing the rain from my gown, and returned to my car. Without a backward glance, I stepped inside and shut the door. The engine hummed to life, warm and steady. As I pulled back onto the road, I felt no guilt, no regret. Only clarity. My destination was the bridal boutique. Because while Daniel lay broken in the gutter, Adrian was waiting for me inside, steady as he had always been. The man who loved me quietly, fiercely, without asking for anything in return. This time I would not waste that love. The rain had cleared by morning. Sunlight spilled across the marble floors of Hart Villa, bright and clean, as though the world itself had been scrubbed of shadows. Daniel Cross's wrecked figure on the roadside was already fading from memory. His end had been ugly, pitiful, but it was his own doing. I felt no guilt. Only freedom. Now my life was mine to reclaim. The boardroom was packed again. Directors shuffled papers, eyes sharp and wary as I entered. My father sat at the head of the long table, his expression calm, though I sensed the weight behind his gaze. Isabella, he said, motioning for me to take the seat beside him. I sat gracefully, my back straight, and opened the thick folder in front of me. The meeting was brutal. Figures were thrown across the table like knives. One director snarled about rising debts. Another pushed for downsizing. A third argued that no woman, certainly not a pampered princess, could make the hard calls required. I let them talk. Let them doubt. Then when the noise reached its peak, I spoke. You're wrong. The room stilled. I laid out my plan in crisp, steady words. Restructuring subsidiaries, consolidating assets, pivoting toward renewable energy ventures with government subsidies, courting international investors who already respected the Hart legacy. Charts and projections gleamed on the screen behind me, every number sharp as a blade. This is not the death of Hart Corporation, I finished, my voice ringing clear. It is our rebirth. Silence. Then slowly my father rose to his feet. His gaze swept the table, his voice thunderous. "From this day forward, Isabella Hart will act as heir to the Hart Corporation. All final decisions will go through her." The directors exchanged stunned glances. Some looked angry, others uneasy. But none could argue with the plan I had just presented. The mantle of responsibility settled on my shoulders. Heavy but steady. And for the first time I welcomed it. That afternoon I drove to the boutique where Adrian was waiting. The bell above the door chimed softly as I entered, the scent of roses and fabric softener enveloping me. He was there by the window, hands in his pockets, watching the sunlight spill across the polished floor. For a moment I simply stood and looked at him. The man who had rescued me from fire. The man who had sat at my graveside in my past life, whispering words I had been too dead to hear. The man who had loved me silently, endlessly, without demand or complaint. This time I would not be blind. "Adrian," I called softly. He turned. His gray eyes met mine, steady as always, but there was something different now. A question, a fear, a flicker of hope he couldn't hide. I crossed the room and stopped before him. "Daniel is gone," I said simply. His jaw tightened. "I know. I'm free." He didn't answer, but his eyes softened, the storm in them easing. I reached for his hand. "And now I want to choose. Not out of desperation. Not out of foolishness. But because I finally see the truth." His fingers curled slowly around mine. "And what truth is that?" "That it was always you." For a moment, silence stretched between us. Then he pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. "You'll regret this," he muttered hoarsely against my hair. I laughed softly, tears stinging my eyes. "Not in this life. Not ever again." The engagement was announced a month later at a glittering gala. The city's elite filled the ballroom, their jewels flashing beneath crystal chandeliers. I stood at the center in a gown of white silk, Adrian at my side in a sharp black suit. My father raised his glass, his voice carrying across the hall. "Tonight I officially announce my daughter Isabella Hart as heir of Hart Corporation. And by her side her fiancé, Adrian Blake." The applause thundered. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "So it's true, she chose Adrian. They're perfect together. What a power couple." I smiled serenely, my hand entwined with Adrian's. For the first time the gazes of the world didn't feel like chains. They felt like acknowledgement. There was no sign of Daniel at the gala. Somewhere in the shadows he was probably still alive, clinging to scraps, rotting slowly from the inside out. But he was nothing now. The world had forgotten him. And so had I. Later that night, after the guest had gone, Adrian and I stood on the balcony of the villa. The city glittered below, fireworks still bursting faintly in the distance. "Do you ever think," I asked softly, "that fate is cruel?" He turned to me. "Yes. But maybe it gave us the second chance." I leaned into him, resting my head against his chest. His heartbeat was steady, strong. "This time," I whispered, "I won't waste it." His arms tightened around me. "Good. Because I won't let you." We stood there in silence, the night air cool, the world vast and endless before us. As days turned into weeks, I threw myself into work, into building the future my family deserved. Every boardroom battle, every sleepless night of study, every cautious step into the world of power, I faced it all with a clarity I had never known. And always Adrian was there. Not in front, not behind, but beside me. He peeled grapes grudgingly. He brought me soup when I forgot to eat. He kissed me when my doubts returned, silencing them with a tenderness that made my heart ache. I was no longer the foolish girl who begged for scraps of affection. I was Isabella Hart, heir, survivor, reborn. And with Adrian by my side I would never fall again. The world outside would keep whispering, keep watching. Rivals would rise, storms would come. But this time I was ready. Because this was my new beginning. The end.